Hey TV fans, Bored now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about episode 1 of series 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the 2024 live action Netflix version. All 8 episodes are now up on Netflix, and the first episode is called Aang, which is the name of the main character, the main avatar. So, yeah, this is sort of quite highly anticipated, although there's a lot of trepidation from long-time fans of the original anime. That show really has a strong fan base, including my co-host Rachel, so I know she was trepidatious about this one, although she did say in her video that there was some promise as well. And let's face it, everybody, I think, wants to forget the terrible M. Night Shyamalan version of this. So it's a pretty low bar if this show is going to be better than that. That's a really low bar. And I can confirm, without getting into my thoughts, then this first episode is already better than that terrible film. But anyway, this is just an overall summary of my thoughts. Because I'm a casual, I've never seen the original show. I know what the basic setup is, but I don't really know much about it. I know the sort of themes they are going for, and that's made clear in this live action version. So it's just an overall thought from a casual. I know, as I said, I think there has been some promising signs for long-time fans, so it seems like maybe they've got a certain amount right, which will please those fans. But I know there's an issue maybe with one of the core characters which they feel they have got wrong. But so, as I said, this is just my outsider perspective without knowing much about the original series. Another thing is then there's a pretty strong supporting cast in this, because, for example, you've got Ken Jeong out of Community and also Daniel Day Kim in the supporting cast. Now, I don't... Sorry, Ken Jeong is the one out of Person of Interest in Lost. I'm thinking of a different guy, but I do know that actor as well. I like that actor a lot. So they're both in it. I think Ken Jeong might have been in this one. I'm not sure. I didn't notice Daniel Day Kim. But just to give it its setup in case you're totally unfamiliar with it. So Aang is this young prodigy type thing who is sort of tasked with bringing together all the different elements of the nature, and there's a series of airbenders who represent each element, so winter, earth, fire or air, and Aang is like the last living airbender, so he has to bring together these spirits and as a way to keep the world together, and at the same time they're fending off like basically a militant style group, and they're led by Zuko, who's like the Exiles crown prince of the Fire Nation, which is the group I was talking about, and he's seeking to regain his honor. And so in the first episode he targets Aang because he sees him as taking him out, that's the main threat gone, and the world is ours kind of thing. So there's kind of environmental type themes. There's also themes to do with family and togetherness, but also how, I guess in politics, in the real world, how things often work better if you've got a cohesive type unit, if people work together. So just, you can broaden it out to certain themes like that. So coming into this, it's quite an interesting position for me, because I'm not a big anime fan. I definitely like some if they're to my taste. There's a few horror-based ones which I do enjoy, and maybe ones that have a little bit more style, or maybe are like genre type ones, but a lot of them, at least series, don't really appeal to me. But I know everyone raves about the series to this, so it does make me want to give it a watch at least. But the sort of show than this one is, and the themes of it, and I don't mind the themes too much, but like the sort of fantasy elements of this, and just some of the subgenre it fits into, with like, oh, it's a chosen one, or like, you know, just there's just certain things that at times it feels a bit like a mix between Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and that's not quite the mix, and I sort of gel with a lot of times. So it does make me wonder if this is really the sort of show for me. But I was interested to see what I thought of episode 1, and I'll just say it was a solid episode. It was a really solid first episode. If I had to guess, I would say episode 1 is going to work quite well for the target audience. It did seem to be in tune with what the show was going for, the original animated show. But I could be wrong about that. But it seemed to capture some of the feel and flavour of that. Now, Netflix have definitely put a lot of money into this, and it probably has paid off. It seems to show on the screen. You've got high-class production values. You've got a lot of style. There's actually, I mean, just to get a bit fancy for a moment, there's a good like flourish and like poetry to the way a lot of the way the scenes are put together. It almost is sort of like ballet or dance or that kind of thing. So just from a visual standpoint, and I guess the way the scenes are put together, like I said, like the flow of the scenes, I really appreciated that. I think there's probably a little bit of uncanny valley at times, and that might be why this works a bit better in animated form, because it's almost like they put so much into the visuals of this and the effects, and at times maybe it came off as a bit too lifelike or a bit too like highly stylized, whereas I know the original show, it's very, you know, back to basics animation almost, so you maybe lose something a little bit. And there were certain moments where like a big like battle was maybe dragging on a bit, so that's a complaint for me a little bit, because the battles were well done and there was some entertaining stuff in them, but there were definitely times when they were dragging on a bit, and maybe some of the effects stood out as not being the best, or maybe then they were just trying a bit too hard. But there's no doubt that it's a well put together show, like the look of it and the whole design of it, and also the cast. I mentioned a couple of the supporting actors, but I think Gordon Comer, who plays Avatar Aang, the lead, he's very natural. I mean, for such a young actor, I think he does a really good job, and you engage with him quite quickly. I think you really believe in his presence and his character, and he's convincing in like the action type scenes, which I think they've toned down a bit for the first episode, because they're obviously going to build to that later. The other standout for me, I think, was like the other kind of lead in a way, which is Katra, who's the water airbender of her tribe, and she took over from that because she lost her mother, who was killed by the Fire Nation. And that actress I really liked. She felt very natural and just had a nice personality to her, but the character came off as very strong-willed and had a lot of principles. But the chemistry between her and Gordon Comer playing Avatar Aang, I thought the chemistry was there between them from the instant, because there's a lot of cynicism surrounding his character, and like the locals aren't sure whether to trust him or accept him as part of their tribe now, and certainly not as the leader. But she's the one who's a bit more sympathetic and can see what he's going through, and does take him on as a sister, and they have a nice bond in this, and she's very tough talking because she also like stands up to her brother when she feels he's being out of line. So probably those two, I think, are like the standouts so far from the cast or the characters. I did enjoy their like brother and sister type vibe. I also like that there was like little bits of comedy sprinkled in. I think that's definitely a good thing for this sort of story and show, because otherwise it can be a bit bogged down, it can drag a bit, especially if it's not always to your taste, which is probably where I'm coming from. So there were little bits of humour which gave it a bit of a lift, so I appreciated that. There's quite a funny scene where like the soldiers, one of the soldiers on the bad guy side, on this militant group side, he's like whinging about this like really ugly grimy location that they're in, where they're set in, like in this castle, and he's comparing it to like a much more glamorous location, and he's just being really sarcastic, and then he gets caught by his leader, and leader's like, yeah, you got a problem, and but it's just a funny like line, and like little bits of humour like that I do appreciate. So I think without going into spoilers, which I probably won't because I'll just give you a bit of an oversight and what I think of the episode, but without going into spoilers, like I said, I think if you're a fan of the original show, I'm guessing you will get something out of this at the very least. And I would say, even though I'm not sure if it's for me, it's a solid first episode. Like, I do have complaints, which I've said, couple of the complaints that drag it down a bit, but I definitely quite enjoyed this first episode, and it did go by quite fast. It's just over an hour, so it did actually go by quite quickly, which is a good sign. So I think this is a one-off review. I don't think I'll review the other episodes because I do have a lot of other stuff on right now, and again, I'm not quite sure if it's going to be for me, but I if I do watch the rest of the show, I think I might just do a season review with summing up what I thought then. But for the time being, yeah, this is just a one-off for the pilot, and just to give you an oversight. So yeah, the message is, if you're a fan of the original, chances are you've already watched this anyway, but if you are a fan, I think there's something at least for you to get from this, and it's at least worth taking a look. So that's Avatar: The Last Airbender, the new series on Netflix, episode 1. My thoughts on it, all 8 episodes are up now, as I said. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're a fan of the show, how did you think this first episode went? Like and subscribe as always, and support me on patreon.com for just patreon.com/borednow for just $1 a month. You get some extra perks such as commentaries and also early access to movie reviews and sometimes TV reviews. But thanks for listening. Take care, guys. See you soon.